Yeah, a little bit. Yep. All right. So, afternoon, everybody. How you doing? Everybody asleep after lunch, or are we in a food coma? Yeah? Okay, cool. So, everybody should be here for What Do You Mean I'm Pwned? I Turned On Automatic Updates. So Jeff and I put this talk together after having a few conversations with some coworkers and things like that. And this actually was, when we put it together, we thought it was going to be an hour. So this is going to be slightly condensed. We had a ton more information that we were going to show in videos and that, but we'll just do one. So to give you guys a little bit of intro of who we are and why we're here and things like that. My name is Scott Thomas. A lot of you may know me as Secure Holio. I've been in IT since 1998 or so, around about there. I've done a whole bunch of different InfoSec jobs. So I started out in ID administration and provisioning, security engineering, vulnerability management. I was a consultant for a couple of years, and now I do application security. If you ever want to read a blog I don't update, it's secureholio.com, or you can hit me up on Twitter or Gmail.
And I'm Jeff Baruth. Good afternoon. I've been an IT professional since 1999, thereabouts, mainly in application development. Decided to dive into security back in 2013. My main responsibilities are incident response and security operations right now. And ibikeil@yahoo.com.
So both Jeff and I work at a day job. We basically don't say where we work because we don't feel like dealing with corporate communications and HR and all the other teams that expect to sign off before we're allowed to say anything, so we just don't say where we work. Suffice to say, we work in the insurance industry and in InfoSec. So as the title precluded to, a lot of people think you turn on automatic updates and it's beer 30, right? Automatic updates will patch everything, you're good to go, the hackers can't get in. Yeah, sometimes. That usually doesn't happen that way.
So you're ready to get out early on a Friday afternoon when your CISO walks down the hallway. Someone's reported a potential data breach. Calm down, we can all handle the incident. We all have those oh shit moments, but keeping calm will help you follow the plan that you've put in place. Being able to remain level-headed and gather all the facts right away are critical. Dust off that incident response plan that you put together months ago. That plan is there for situations just like this, to keep you calm and walk through it. Part of that plan has an up-to-date contact list, right? All the right stakeholders, all their phone numbers, it's all up to date. So you know who to reach out to, your legal team, your infrastructure team, security operations, all in one easy to read document. That plan was practiced in your quarterly tabletops, right? Everybody does those? Show of hands.
Anybody?
What do you mean you don't do quarterly tabletops, don't have a plan ready? Not everyone has all these pieces. For Scott and I, we found 3 critical pieces as we go through our incidents. The contact list, critical. It's so simple. The process and the plan. Some of the steps that I wanted to talk through with these. That contact list, it's so often overlooked. One of the first things I was asked to do on an incident was reach out to my infrastructure lead. Didn't know who they were. Didn't know how to get a hold of them. Quickly updated that contact list. It's critical to keep it up to date and test it. The plan, an overall plan for your incidents. Who are the stakeholders for data breach? Ransomware. What's your communication plan? When do you reach out to the CISO versus your direct management? How do you engage a third party? The process. What steps need to be taken for a data breach or ransomware? Having that plan in place really helps keep you calm and get through it quicker. Remember to always test all these too during your tabletops. Some other things that we've noticed during tabletops, utilizing non-IT personnel. They're always willing to help you, so why not take advantage of that? You can learn from both teams. I actually ran into a guy on the train. He was wondering what I did for our company, and I explained security. He then asked a little bit more about it and if he could become more engaged with us, so I actually use him for our incident response process. We can hide data on his machine as long as his management knows. And he's been a tremendous asset for us. Also, knowing your boundaries. knowing we happen to use some managed service partners in our place of work, knowing where I can and can't go look, and then who to engage and when to engage them is critical. For instance, who knew in Singapore during an incident, if you impact a Singapore individual, you have to fill out an incident response form with their government. I didn't know that. So we quickly added that to our plan. The biggest thing, make sure your company knows how to get a hold of the security team. That was also a big thing that we found. No one knew how to get a hold of us. No one knew how to report an incident. All right, so the incident's been handled. We touched a little on the preparedness and the incident response and handling the process. We're going to talk now about the prevention.
So, for a show of hands, how many people are blue team? Oh, come on, I know you're not all red team. Okay, so patching is one of the easiest things to do as a blue teamer. Everybody knows what duct tape is, right? If you can't duck it, oh, come on. Everybody knows this. If you can't duck it, thank you. So, everybody has a patching process, right? Yes, no? Okay, so do you know what you can and can't patch? Does everybody turn on automatic updates? Just call it a day? So, of the people that have a patch process, raise your hands. Keep your hands up if you have a comprehensive application and infrastructure inventory. Most everybody's hand went down. So, one of the things that you're going to have to understand from a vulnerability management and a protection blue team process perspective is what you actually own. If you don't know it's there, you can't protect it. So, of those people that don't do patching, auto updates isn't a panacea. So, you shouldn't be doing anything in that. So, of the people that have a patching process, who actually is in an enterprise and has auto updates turned on? Anybody? One person? Have you had it bite you in the ass before? Okay. So, part of this talk was Jeff and I have somebody that we know that their answer to everything is just either patch it or get it off my network. There is no in between. There is no risk process, no acceptance or anything like that. So, that's a home user's approach. So, a home user, when they decide, what are we going to patch? They're going to, every time is going to come back to patch everything. Patch all the things. We can, just there's a patch out there, put it out there. But as you probably have run into, that's not something you can do because it's going to break something. If it breaks something on a home machine, it's usually one issue. You fix that one issue, you move on with your life. If you break 1,000 machines in an enterprise environment, that's not a good thing. So, does anybody know what this image is? Anyone? I don't either. I think it's a SAN. I pulled it off the internet. But that's my point, is if you don't know what is on your network, you can't protect it. You're going to run into things like a SAN that has firmware that you didn't know is 5 years out of date. It's going to have a vulnerability in SSL or something, You're going to run into those issues, and if you don't know what's on your network, you're not going to be able to protect it. Which also causes you to end up with, you can't patch all the things. So, what can you do? Document everything. You're going to run into your OS, Linux, Windows, Apple. You can patch a lot of the OS stuff pretty easily. The main OS vendors have gotten to the point where they don't break too much stuff, honestly. But if you go to patch Java or Flash, a lot of times any of those middle frameworks are going to cause issues with your applications. They're going to cause issues with compatibility in your environment. And you're going to run into problems like that. And you need to know where those problems are, because if you don't know where they are, you can't tell your management how to fix them. So the takeaway for patching is basically this is table stakes, right? Everybody should be doing patching, but that's not the end all be all. So if you can turn on automatic updates, that's great. If you can't, you're going to have some sort of process you go through to get to the point where you can patch what you can. There are other steps though. Does anybody play D&D? So system hardening is kind of like leather armor. It doesn't do much, but it's better than flapping in the breeze. So you get a little bit of protection from your CIS standards. What services should we turn on and off? Should we disable the guest account, or change the admin password this many times a year, or whatever it is? Your CIS standards are pretty good as far as platform based, what you should and shouldn't do from a kind of a type of a look for what you should be doing for hardening. But the other thing you can do with system hardening is talk to your auditors. A lot of people run from auditors in this industry. I don't know why. Auditors aren't my favorite people, but they can help you. Your auditors can be the voice outside of IT that says, hey, this is an issue, we need to get this fixed. They can also seem to come up with money. Whenever they write an issue, all of a sudden there's money that you didn't have before. And don't be afraid of your red team findings either. A lot of people bring in pen testers, and then they try and argue with the pen tester if that's actually a finding or not. You're paying this company to come in, they're going to do a test, and they say, here's an issue you should fix. And you're looking at it going, no, I don't have the money for that, so I'm going to argue it down so I don't have to fix it. That's not what they're there for. They're at the external voice that's going to help you get your systems to where you need them to be. So application security is where I focused for the last year, which was new to me. It's still a facet of vulnerability management, so it wasn't completely outside my wheelhouse, but it is something that I hadn't even thought of before. Especially if you have homegrown applications or you outsource to have your applications created for you, application security is a huge thing that you need to start looking at. So if it's an outsourced environment, what does your contract say? If you contract with your development company, they should be providing you secure code. If they don't provide you secure code, it should be their dime to fix it. So if you find a vulnerability in something, or somebody comes up to you and tells you, hey, your application is vulnerable, and it was written by an outside third party, your contract better have a clause in there that says, and this is free to fix. If it's insourced, you want to train your developers, obviously, so that they don't create bad code, and if they do, they know how to fix it. Also, one thing that we've started to do at our company is get the non-functional requirements for security put into our SDLC. So at the beginning of the project, they'll get assigned a security consultant internally that actually tells them what they should and shouldn't be doing with the application or the project that they're working on. So there's a couple different ways you can do application security. One is what they call SAST, which is static application security testing. It's basically static code review or bytecode review. One thing that I've had a gotcha moment on this is that a lot of places use COTS software, commercial off-the-shelf software, that they don't know what the risk is to that software. Contact your vendors, ask them if they do SAST or any sort of security testing. If they come back and they say, oh yeah, we use vendor A with this policy and we score this, it at least gives you a mark in the sand of where you can say, this is something where I know exactly where you guys are at security-wise, and I'm going to either accept that or go with somebody else. Kind of gives you, to give you a little bit of a background on ours, we had one where we have a large vendor that we actually purchased code, a framework from, and we said, hey, do you guys do any security testing? And they said no. We're like, oh, okay, well, we use this product. What do you think? Do you think you could use that? Oh yeah, you guys can scan it, and if you find anything, let us know. Do you realize how much that costs? We would be paying out the money to do this, and we had to go back to them and say, no, you guys need to run this, because this is something you can say at that point, yes, we do security testing. You need to pay for it, not us. So that was the conversation our vendor management office had to have at that point. The only drawback to SaaS models that I've found, the biggest one is false positives. You will get a lot of things where it comes up, oh, this is a hard-coded password from the word password, even if it isn't holding a password in the code. They do also cost quite a bit more. The cheaper side of application security is DAST, or Dynamic Application Security Testing. Excuse me. A lot of this is your web crawlers, the ones that test your web apps and things like that. Automatically, they look for cross-site scripting, they look for SQL injection, a lot of the stuff that can be automated. It's not necessarily the best, but it's definitely something you should be doing at least as a minimum bar. It's usually not quite as expensive either. The one thing that we'll get to that in a second. And then the new one that's coming out is IAST, which is supposed to be interactive. It's the new hotness, supposedly. From every vendor I've talked to, they can't nail down a definition of it. It's supposed to be a middle road between dynamic and static. I haven't seen a vendor that can really, like, truly say, yes, I absolutely need this, and it will augment the two that I already have. So I think that's still an emerging space, but other people may have different ideas. The one thing that you can't test with an automated scanner, though, is logic. So from our insurance perspective, if I've got a underwriter that if the roles were set up incorrectly, let's say in the application, and they can actually write and underwrite a policy and then pay a claim on it, that's a problem. And that's not going to be found by an automatic scan. But it's something that you should be doing in your application from a protection perspective to evaluate all those different ways that the logic flow works and make sure that you have those checks and balances. So what's the one thing that most people overlook from a blue team protecting your environment type perspective? So you've got your patching, you're reviewing your processes, you run your tools, things like that. There's always one thing that a lot of people don't really come up with and think that this is part of blue teaming. Anyone? Anyone have a CISSP in here? That's one of the 8 domains. What's that? Partially, yeah. It's actually IAM, Identity and Access Management. A lot of people overlook this as part of their blue team side of things. They think, oh yeah, we've got the patching in place, we've got our processes, everything's good. But the problem is that your admin leaves. Have you guys ever seen the news stories where, so-and-so logs in and wiped out all the router configs on some company? They didn't work there anymore, but they still had access. That's not a good thing. So if you disable somebody, you need to make sure that you've killed their, or even if they move internally. We have one of our coworkers that left the security world and went off to do risk control. We needed to make sure his access was taken away. Databases, mainframe, application access, all that kind of stuff needs to be part of your ID administration side of things. Because ID access is cradle to grave. If you grant someone that permission, you need to be able to ungrant them that if it's no longer needed for their job or if they leave the company. Also, do you monitor privileged access on a regular basis? You guys do privileged access reviews? Anybody? Do you do end user access reviews as well? Not only just your admin reviews, but also I have this application that does this for my business and it's critical, and I left somebody in there that does this particular function and they stole a bunch of money. Not a good thing. HR should be the key to that, though. They should be telling you when someone changes jobs or leaves the company. All right. So we were going to do a bunch of demos, but I think we're almost out of time. So we're not going to do a live demo. So we will do a video demo, if we can get it to work. Yep, there we go. It's a little bit difficult to see, but basically what this is we've got a Windows 7 machine that's got an open FTP server on it. This is part of the system hardening demo that we were going to show. So what Jeff walked through on this is we actually did an nmap to that machine to discover that that port was open. Can anybody see this? Is it real difficult to see? If Jeff can get the nmap to run. All right. So I came up with a number of open ports like any Windows machine is going to. But it does have FTP open on that particular machine. So part of the system hardening, if you don't turn off services that are out there, or if you're testing things and you're like, oh, I don't need to harden this system because it's a test machine, you're going to have those issues where someone's going to be able to connect to that FTP account and see what's out in that particular directory. So in this case, Jeff's connecting to it. You took a while to do this. So here he's connecting as guest. So if someone was using this to transfer data from one computer to another, they may put something out there like employee salary data or some other malicious, intent or personally identifiable information or company secrets or whatever, if they need to transfer it, users are like water. They're going to go to the least common or the least resistance way to get something done. So if they leave salary data out there on an FTP server, that's not a good thing either. All right. So that was our videos. So the biggest thing is, what can you do to fix this stuff?
Document and test that IR plan. Everyone should have an incident response plan, big or small. Make sure that you test it quarterly so that everyone knows what to do, what their roles and responsibilities are.
Patching systems is obviously a big thing as well. I mean, you should be doing it, but you also want to make sure that you're documenting anything you can't do. So if you can't patch Java for some reason because of some application, you need to call that out in some sort of an executive review that says, we're still on Java 1.7 because we can't move off of it because of application A. If application A needs to be sunsetted, upgraded, whatever it may be, then at least the executive knows, and that money can be eventually brought around so you can get up to the next version.
Harden that configuration. Turn IIS off if it's not needed. Turn FTP off if it's not needed. That'll close a lot of gaps.
Obviously, test your applications. If it's something where you've got an insourced or an outsourced development team, you need to understand what responsibilities they have to fix the code when you do find vulnerabilities.
Manage your users' access. As Scott mentioned, do those end-user reviews. Make sure that application developer that moves to security has no access to the mainframe anymore.
And last, we work in security, so you're going to have to drink heavily. That's the photo credits we had. And anybody have Q&A? Questions? Yeah. We actually use Veracode. So the question was, what he's used Fortify 360 as his particular static code analysis, and the results have been mixed as far as the findings for it. You know, which one, the severities in that. So what do we use? We actually use Veracode currently. We have seen the same issue with that as well. So it's some things come up, like I mentioned, password is going to be one of the issues where the word password or pwd or anything like that is going to show up as a hard-coded password. I think I've seen one issue since we started scanning applications that actually had a hard-coded password. The rest of them have all been false positives. And like you said, it is going to depend on multiple factors as far as a finding, whereas the vendor is going to see this as a critical, but you're going to bump it down to a high because it's internal or two people have access to the application and they can already see that data anyway. It really depends on kind of tweaking the application. I mean, the applications themselves are good, but they're not going to be something that you can just set and forget either. Anybody else? Yeah. So the question was, do we do anything with the identity access management and the access reviews? We do, actually. We just put in a tool, SailPoint, as part of our IAM program. So originally it was just process and procedures. So we would have a request come in, we'd add the person to a group or to an ACL somewhere, and then it comes back and says, okay, we have to take this back if we need to. You know, it was all a manual process. Now we're getting to the point to where we have roles defined. When someone requests a role, it gets approved, it gets added. It's easy enough to take all that access away as well. Yeah, no, it's actually been worlds better than we were at before. So yeah, we like it so far. What's that? No, we use SailPoint for that as well, for privileged identity access management. Yeah, he was asking what we use for privileged identity management, and we use SailPoint for that as well. Do you know? That actually was done while the question was, Did we look at any other vendors when we brought in SailPoint? I wasn't involved in that project. That actually happened during the time where I had left the company before I came back. I do know that they did their due diligence as far as looking at other vendors. I don't know which ones there were, though. All right, no other questions? No. Go ahead. The question was, if HR is not able to provide you the data into your IAM program to be able to make the changes to the person's ID, is that correct? Okay, so most systems that I've seen from an HR perspective can at least do some sort of an export, be it CSV, text file, something like that. It may not be an automated feed necessarily. Ours comes in through a CSV, so that's what SailPoint actually ingests to do any sort of changes. As far as creating IDs, changing IDs, and things like that. I don't know, honestly, if there's a better way of doing it or if there's a product out there that would do the actual communication between the two. All right. Thank you, everybody.